Hey, how you doing there? You might be surprised how I finally review this camera at the end of this video, but I always take camera reviews extremely seriously. Before making any bold statements, I have to be completely certain, undeniably so, as to my final statements, because people will tear me apart and crucify me if I make some sort of illogical, inaccurate, or unintelligent conclusions, and I'm certainly not going to do that on an expensive camera. I've tested the hell out of the new GFX100S camera. I even had it all day long at the farm. My shoes, my boots actually, were really muddy at the farm, but I actually loved hauling it out at the farm, taking it downtown a few times, taking it to various places to shoot with it, and as the #1 lover, I can easily say that, honestly, the #1 lover of Fujifilm medium format camera, as my statement always goes, compared to what? When someone says something, it's like, well, so-and-so, it's like, oh, like, compared to what? So, basis of comparison I have here to make bold statements about this camera one way or the other are what we would call really good. I humorously call this camera the jumbo shrimp, and that really is what it is, a large sensor and a small camera. As I showed you in a prior video, this camera is substantially smaller than my Nikon D500, which is a crop sensor camera. Honest to goodness, if anybody ever had any notions about Fujifilm making full-frame sensor cameras after coming out with a medium format camera that's smaller than a crop sensor Nikon DSLR, you know, those should completely vanish. I hope I never see that question again, to be honest with you. Also, too, important thing, you can't tell that from videos. And I've had my hands on endless cameras and worked in several camera stores. This is the most dense camera I've ever had my hands on in my entire life, except for example, like a brass-bodied Leica camera. This is the densest camera. That's not a negative. I mean, it's very small, but, you know, there's 10 pounds of stuff and a 5-pound casing here on this, so that really shouldn't have been surprising, but it was surprising how dense this camera is. I'm going to get to the review and talks about some of this stuff, but also too wanted to point out the fact that I've made tips and tricks videos on this camera. I've familiarized myself front to back, up and down, and left to right on this camera, so I've compared it to the 100, and I like to too talk about this compared to my favorite camera of all time, whether it be film or digital, which is the GFX50R, the 51 megapixel GFX medium format. You know, it's very inexpensive. It's currently $3,500. And I kind of pack it around everywhere. I'd like to talk about that and also make a conclusion relative to that here. I'd like to make a statement that I consider this, and I'm reading off my own notes that I made on this because I went over them over and over in my head. And so, well, is this exactly what I feel after, you know, so much testing and use with it? And the answer is yes. This is the single solution camera for most all things, for far into the future in a saturated camera market. And yes, I know what this camera is for. I'm not denying that this camera is not a hardcore sports action wildlife camera. However, this and the 100 are the world's only fast focusing medium format cameras. And there's something else important to talk about this camera. Even though it has the exact same sensor in it and the exact same image processing engine as the GFX100, a bold statement needs to be made about what its performance is relative to the GFX100. Empirical facts, and whether that was noticeable or not, and I'll get to that very quickly here. Now, there is a mode dial up here. I shoot 99% of everything in aperture, priority, or manual. There are 6 custom settings here on the mode dial, which is very nice. However, I'd never use them myself, but I can see a lot of people liking them, and I actually did testing with them, setting up custom 1 and custom 2, say for aperture priority and setting an ISO range, and quickly turning to that on the mode dial. But me personally, I don't find use for that. I actually do love the fact that there is a nice hard switch between stills and movie mode right in front of the mode dial on the 100S. The larger joystick, which I actually didn't point out in the earliest comparison video from a few days ago, is substantially larger than that on like the XT4 or the GFX50R, GFX100. This would be great for cold times, or if you have gloves on. You have much better traction and a much larger surface area in the joystick. I actually like that. There is, and I didn't think it would be, even though it was listed that it has better IBIS than the GFX100, I didn't think it would be noticeable, but immediately in using this camera in IBIS and low light high ISO settings indoors, there's a definitive, noticeable, better IBIS on low shutter speed, shake reduction, and I have really good grip, and I keep few contact points of the camera, so that combined with IBIS, I'm already good to begin with, but it is noticeably better on this, and I was not expecting that at all. Much better than that of the 100. And the reason for this, even though this is the same sensor and image processing engine as the GFX100, it has a smaller mass IBIS mech platform that the sensor rests on. The smaller a mass is, the more responsive it is. Just like the lightweight cars that do that Indianapolis stuff where they're actually turning corners. Same principle. They make them really, really lightweight, carbon fiber. They remove every ounce because it makes it a more responsive car on turns. And that's all an IBIS mech does anyway. It makes a bunch of turns on various axes. So the fact they were able to jam that into a smaller camera and make it a smaller mass means it's more responsive. And I didn't think it would be noticeable, but it was substantially noticeable. So that's a huge plus on this camera. It is 1 pound lighter than that of my GFX100. Also, too, reference back to the video I just made comparing this and my GFX100. However, the 3.7 million dot EVF on the GFX100S is not noticeable whatsoever, to me anyway, over that of my 5.7 million dot removable EVF on the GFX100. Way superior ergonomics over that of the 100, just undeniably so. By the way, also too, if you get this camera, get the GB001 made by Fujifilm. The grip belt, it was made for the XT1. It fits this camera perfectly. It's a hand strap made by Fujifilm. It's like 34 bucks, I believe. You can get it at any camera retail store. The only thing I would miss on this is the tilting EVF potential, and that's another $550 accessory you have to buy that attaches the EVF that clips onto the GFX50S or the 100. But I mean, this is a $4,000 less camera than the GFX100. A lot more lightweight, far better ergos, more responsive IBIS, which I did not think would be noticeable, but it darn well is. Everybody kept asking about the EVF between the 3.7 million dot and the 5.7 million dot on that of the 100, and it's not noticeable by me at all anyway. Negatives. Now, this is not the camera, but it is a negative that has to be mentioned. I hope Fujifilm changes their mind on this, but they did not include a charger. Now there is a little block, that plugs into a wall outlet, and you actually plug it in over here, and it charges the battery. But that charges across the main board, and I've said in my free Fujifilm book, which is in the link below, I don't recommend anybody do that. I should have brought it out here. It's the little 2-battery XT4 battery charger. And by the way, as I said, this camera uses the exact same battery. Not the same battery as the GFX100 or 50R or 50S. Use the exact same battery as the Fujifilm XT4. So I wished, even if it's a cheaper 1 battery slot only charger, I wish Fujifilm would have included that. They should have, because I've had a lot of people, are you listening, Fuji? A lot of people tell me that this is going to be their first Fujifilm camera. Unlike me, since they already had the darn charger for the XT4, so I could charge the batteries on the GFX100S, a lot of people are buying this camera do not have that because it's their first Fujifilm. And Fujifilm should have, and I hope they fix that, or start including it for free, they should include the charger with the GFX100S. If for no other reason other than the fact that so many people told me this is their first Fujifilm camera, because I do not recommend charging across the main board, because you can't use the camera because it's basically part of the charger. When you're charging across the main board, you can't use the camera because the camera is essentially in the circuit of the charge to the battery. And there is a potential danger there. It's not imagined danger, it's a real danger. So I recommend never doing that. Just buy that 2-slot Fujifilm charger for the X-T4 battery, which this takes the exact same battery. So that's the only negative. Is that a negative of the camera? But it's a negative of the package in which this camera comes in, which of course is the box. I like to compare this to my 50R and 50S. Sensor-wise, the 50R and the 50S are, and I've said this many, many times, essentially the Nikon D4 of medium format. Relatively low megapixels. If you can't nail the image with 51 megapixels of medium format, you can't do it with anything, period. But who cares? The output is just absolutely amazing and undeniable. The 100 and 100S are basically the medium format equivalent of what the Nikon D850 is. I just got a text from somebody, I can't say who. It's kind of weird. I'm doing a Fujifilm video and I got a text from somebody, no, not that this video is live. Sorry about that. Yeah, the 100 and the 100S are, to me, and of course there's a lot more megapixels than my Nikon D850, but it's the medium format version of the D850. So many thousands of people have told me, and I had the D850 for years and years, like this is the last DSLR I ever need to buy. It's got so many megapixels. The output's incredible. This is the medium format version of that. I'm just trying to draw a line and an analogy. You have a lot more megapixels, and they're both BSI sensors, like in the D850 as well as the 100 and 100S here. Amazing output, a load of croppability. So I was just trying to draw an analogy if you're familiar or you have those systems. People say, and you really should do your homework. Medium format has been, nosebleed unapproachable for years, including to me, even if you're making money with it. But this machine, either you have tons of money, or you're a very serious hobbyist, or you're actually making money with this camera. You can't see it, but off camera there's a $4,000 sewing machine here, and there's a $3,500 sewing machine over there. That one paid for itself in a month. There really are three people, and when you say this is an expensive camera, expensive compared to what? This is amazingly inexpensive, and yes, yet it's still $6,000. But there really are those three categories. There could be an exception, but I don't think that there is. You're either a serious, hardcore hobbyist of photography, or, you've got money and you want the best, and this is it. Or you put this thing to work like a mule or your livestock, and you make it work for you. Just like my sewing machine, it's insanely expensive, paid for itself just like that. Literally, many times over, has already paid for itself. So that's what this camera is for. People say, that camera's too expensive. Like, well, if you're a serious hobbyist or you're making money with it, it's a tax write-off too. If you have a business like me where you're doing business and product photography, here's the secret, okay? Ask your tax guy if you don't believe me. I'm 100% right. This is not only will it pay for itself if you're using it to make money for you, but it'll also be paying for itself once again as a tax write-off at the end of the tax year. Yes, yes indeed. Now I'm not a tax person, I don't have to, just ask your tax guy, that's a fact. Getting onto this, so yeah, if you're, doing product or commercial or corporate photography, it does pay for itself. What is this camera best for? Landscape, travel, architecture, business, corporate, product photography, archival images to last into the perdurable future. Actually, Fujifilm president, and I think he got that off of me because I was the first person talking about that years and years ago, since I'm such a huge GFX fan. I even have GFX tattooed on my hand. You want to know how much of a GFX fan I am? Look at that. I have GFX tattooed on my hand. That is for archival imagery. There's just not a chance in hell that anybody in the distant future is going to complain about the incredible amount of information of a decent image. We all moan about these famous people that are dead now and famous events, and imagine how incredible they would be if shot on medium format like a GFX. I mean, just so much information. Lastly, too, of course, street photography. I hold no delusions that this is a hardcore sports action wildlife camera, even though it's the world's first, along with the 100, only fast focusing medium format camera. That's what the heck this is for, the X-T4. Or whatever DSLR, your Canon, your Nikon, whatever it is you have. So getting to the conclusions. This is, and I made a really bold statement, I'm not trying to reminisce here, but when I was the first person to review the Nikon D500, and I made a bold statement, and everybody just said I was just so full of it. Oh no, it's a $2,000 crop sensor camera. Oh, and I said, no, this camera is going to sell like sliced bread, you know, or the invention of pizza. And everybody said I was wrong, and I was not only right, I was 1,000% right. This camera is, and this is a bold statement, and I'm going to make a bunch of bold statements about the conclusion on this camera, because I have tested the hell out of it. That this camera is what the D500 was when I told everybody to get it, and it is like the Nikon D4 and D500. And those are old cameras, the D4 especially. That's a camera everybody still wants to buy. It's a 16 megapixel camera, the Nikon D4. Who cares? It's incredible. It's a timeless piece. Technology is never timeless. I know that, and you know that. So don't take me super literally here, but I do mean that literally. And medium format, whether it be film or digital, has always been future-proof. But I can actually honestly say, with no bias, because I don't work for Fujifilm, okay, girlfriend, that this is the most future-proof medium format camera. A timeless camera, you know, the last camera to own. Now, not for sports action wildlife, hardcore so. Not that you can't do sports action wildlife camera with photography with this, because you can if you have the skills and you set focus traps on and on and on. But it is that. It is a future-proof camera, even over and above that of other medium format cameras, including my most favorite 50R. But once again, you know, if you can't totally nail the shot with 51 megapixels in medium format, you can't do it with anything. But this camera is amazing. And also, too, the same thing on the lower mass of the IBIS mech that the sensor rests on. This does have more responsive autofocus performance with the exact same lenses over that of the GFX100. Several people have said, other people are reporting that the GFX100 has more responsiveness in autofocus. And it does. It's barely noticeable. But low light, handheld, slow shutter speed performance on this camera is very, I was not expecting that, is very noticeable on this of the GFX100 over 100S over that of the 100. Another bold statement in this short list of conclusions that other than hardcore sports action wildlife, this is actually easily the last best camera that you'll need to buy. No technology is forever. I know that, you know that. Okay, listen, let's not like mince words with each other here. But it is, and I've never said that before, not in any review of any camera, including the Nikon D500. The last best camera that you would need to buy. There's just not really a chance in Hades that you could say, you know, 102 megapixels of BSI, medium format, just not cutting it anymore. Said nobody ever. It's not going to happen. It's just not. It's just literally, utterly impossible that you'll even try to argue with yourself or anybody else that you'll ever want better image output than you'll actually have out of this camera. I'd like to make some bold statements here before giving a final review on this camera. Like I said, I do take camera reviews very seriously, especially on an expensive camera. And I have no affiliate links. I don't sell this camera, and I sure as heck don't work for Fujifilm, okay? So let's get real here if you don't know me or you haven't seen my videos. So. Even the people that don't like me, it's like, I hate that guy. You know, he just grates my nerves the wrong way. I don't like the way he looks and the way he talks, but I trust him because I know he's not trying to sell me something. And he actually does know cameras. He makes logical, intelligent, wise conclusions about what is good and what's not good. So that's actually quite important. This really is the one camera I'd pack everywhere and always and be 100% happy with, essentially 100% of the time, unless I was trying to track squirrels on crack in the trees, which of course, even though it's the fast focusing and the world's only fast focusing medium format camera along with the 100, I'd be happy with 100% of the time. And that's the first camera that I can actually ever say that about. It just is. Does this supplant my GFX50R as my favorite camera of all time? And I've said that 100 times in 100 different videos. The camera is cheap, it's awesome, it's compact, it's shaped like a brick. That camera does not have good ergos, okay? Both that camera and this camera. This camera you don't need the hand strap. The hand strap on this camera just keep it from falling out of your hand. That camera does need the hand strap. But does this camera supplant my favorite camera of all time, the GFX100R? And the answer to that is 100% yes, it does. I've said also, too, 1,000 times, I'm never going to sell that camera. Why? I'll probably end up going to my dad. That camera is awesome, the output's incredible, and it's medium format. But we have to once again get back to compared to what? That doesn't diminish the 50R or its incredible output and the crazy low price, like it's $3,500 on sale right now. Before giving the final statement of my review on this camera, I humorously do call this the jumbo shrimp. I mean, just a large sensor, a small package. It is easily, other than a brass body Leica, the densest camera I've ever had my hands on. And trust me when I tell you that. I give this camera, and this is a bold statement on an expensive camera, because I don't sell anything, and I like people to get good stuff, and I don't like people to spend money unnecessarily, especially when it comes to an expensive camera. For medium format, they say, well, $6,000 is a lot of money. Well, yes, it is. Depends on how rich you are or not, obviously so. But compared to the spectrum of medium format and what the heck is out there, this is not expensive at all. It's dirt cheap. It's like saying, is a $50,000 Lamborghini expensive? It's like, well, yeah, $50,000 is a lot of money. So, yeah, but for a Lamborghini, it's really cheap. Which is true, so I give this camera a 10 out of 10. I have nothing to say ill towards this camera whatsoever. The IBIS improvement over that of the 100 to me was borderline shocking. I use the word shocking. The only negative I give is for the system, meaning the box, not the camera itself, is that I wish Fujifilm would have included a charger. I think that was a mistake. I don't agree with it. I object. Where's my gavel at? I object. I object to them doing that, as I said before, because so many people are telling me that this is going to be their first Fujifilm camera. To me, I don't give a darn, because I already have the charger for the same battery from my X-T4, but Fujifilm should have included that. But that doesn't diminish what this camera... I mean, if you're going to buy a $6,000 camera, I'm pretty sure you can buy a $70 charger, but it still should have been included. Either that or just, raise the price of the camera box and whatnot, 30, 40 bucks or something. But yeah, I literally do give this camera a 10 out of 10 across the board. The ergonomics are incredible. The IBIS is shocking. I love the top display with the illuminated and customizable. Fujifilm calls this a sub monitor. Let's really call it what everybody else calls it, a top display. I love the larger joystick on the camera. That's not why I buy a $6,000 camera, obviously, but I love that improvement. The EVF difference between millions of dots is not noticeable to me at all. So yes, this does, and one of the last statements I make again, this does supplant my GFX100R, bold statement, as my favorite camera of all time. And right next to, or maybe even better, this gets my highest recommendation of any camera I've ever reviewed in my life. Slightly, either equal to or slightly above, even though it's a much more expensive camera, but it's a medium format camera. Over that of the highest rated camera that I've ever reviewed, that of the Nikon D500, which has been a timeless camera. When I made that statement about the D500, I will remind you again, everybody said, no, you're crazy. No, how could you just say so much good stuff about the D500? It's like, no, I will be proven 100% right, and I was proven 150% right. And I will be proven exactly the same on this, the GFX100S. Once again, I do not work for Fujifilm. I have no affiliate links. I don't get any kickbacks. I don't get paid by anybody. Okay? So when I make a bold statement about a camera, trust me, I actually do mean it. And I think about it. I don't just like write stuff down and come make a video. I bet a lot of you think I do that, but I don't. I take that statement bold and serious, and I set it upon a foundation of logic, facts, and wisdom. And yes, this is the highest rated camera I have ever reviewed. I mean that. You can tell me I'm lying, you can tell me you don't like that conclusion, doesn't matter. I will stick by it for all eternity. It is. Okay? So there you go. There's my full review of this, the Fujifilm GFX100S, the highest rated camera that I've ever reviewed. And I mean that. Fujifilm. Thank you for watching. Lux e veritas, and goodbye.